Welcome to Dynamo's Dozen, the podcast that we bring you each and every single week, where we talk about whatever may be on our minds, from pro wrestling, sports, entertainment, music, movies, usually fresh shots and jocks, and everything in between. Never forgetting the talk, but mainly pro wrestling. I am your host, as always, Ian the Dynamo Kelly, joined by my wonderful co-host, the shopkeeper, Niall Hogan. And what a well, let's not say wonderful, but what a show, what an action-packed show we have for you today. And it's a main event that you are not gonna want to miss. It's the story that everybody's talking about. It's the story that people are afraid to talk about, but it's a story that here on Dynamo's Dozen, we will be unfiltered. So, without further ado, Mr. Hogan, my friend, how are you this week?
Good, not a bother. Really warm out these days, which is really killing me. It's not great podcasting weather, in fairness. Might have to start doing a few of these outdoors if we could find a quiet place. But it's really warm at the moment, stuff like that. Up to my eyes as always, between football and pro wrestling and work and life and everything in between. But yeah, we've got plenty to talk about tonight. A couple of good updates out there and stuff like that. And but as you said, there is a central story there that we're going to be talking about that we seem at the moment that we just can't escape. And I have a little bit of an update on that as well that you may not know about. So we'll talk about that as well.
Okay, and that will be our main event. Or maybe, you know what? I just had to realizing I'm wearing a Stranger Things t-shirt, so maybe we should call this podcast Stranger Things. But you do have a few little bits, and you've got an exciting new segment to debut today as well, which was the brainchild of yourself, and I'm really excited about that. It's going to be something that we're bringing people each week. So you'll be able to drop that in whenever you please. But where do we begin, Niall? It's another week and another. Yeah.
Where do we begin? Yeah, well, let's hold back on the main event for the moment. Where we should probably begin is few people were inquiring this week about Undertaker leaving Mick Foley out of his Hall of Fame speech. Which is kind of a significant thing when you think about it, because as you know, when we think about the Undertaker, of course we think about Mick Foley and those Hell in a Cell matches and all that kind of stuff. It's on every kind of promo video, it's on every kind of crazy video, it's on every don't try this at home video or sample of it basically. But Taker came out and he basically said he said he didn't want his speech to be about his opponents or even himself, feeling that the lessons he learned in his career were the focal point and that he was sharing the info to help people in their lives and thank the WWE universe. Now, my counter rebuttal to that would be, well, he mentioned Triple H and he mentioned Shawn Michaels, both of which rightly so and should have been mentioned, especially for the part that they played in his career. But
mentioned Brett as well, didn't he?
Mentioned Brett as well, yeah. But I think he definitely should have got a mention. What do you think?
Well, listen, you know, even though I'd be a fan of Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart and stuff like that, and I get it because they were such a big influence in his, in his career. But I mean, yeah, it's. I mean, you got to put Mick Foley in there. It's the moment, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's the moment. I'm not saying his career is defined by that moment, but I mean, if you're going to throw respect out to those guys, i.e. Sean, Hunter, Brett, you really got to put Mick Foley in there, especially when you threw the guy through the cage, which wasn't meant to happen, as we know.
Yeah.
It baffles me a little bit too. It definitely.
Yeah, I don't think it's anything on purpose. I think it might have been just an oversight. But yeah, I do think it's one of those when you look at Taker's career, if there's a vignette put out there, those moments are obviously in it, and obviously you get the Shawn stuff and the Triple H stuff and all and that as well. But I suppose the argument from Undertaker as well is if he was to mention all these moments, he'd probably be still there giving the speech as well, 30-year career or whatever it is, you know what I mean? So he's had so many moments in the business. So yeah, I think we'd probably let this one slide, but I think looking back on it, I think Foley probably should have got the nod as part of the speech as well. That would be my view.
Me too.
And that's not coming from being a Mick Foley fan or anything now, because I'm not necessarily a huge Mick Foley fan. I can appreciate what he did in the business and stuff like that, but he wouldn't necessarily be in my top 5 or top 10 list. But certainly, I think in terms of Taker's career, and in terms of your tipping the hat in terms of that speech, I think you got to find a place for Puff Foley in there, don't you?
Yeah, you got it. Yeah.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah, it's just a small thing. So we said we'd bring it up.
Well, it's but to some people, to Mick Foley fans, and Mick Foley is probably not a small thing. So it's
And I think, to be honest, I think most Taker fans would agree as well that certainly Mick Foley had a huge part to play in Taker's career, and certainly put his own life on the line many times in those Taker matches and stuff like that. So yeah. Another little bit of news this week. After the bell with Corey Graves had one Angelo Dawkins on it from the Street Profits. Who we really were high on the Street Profits and the Usos and all that kind of stuff at the moment. But he was responding to the idea that he was second best. And I know we've had this conversation before where there's talk that Montez Ford may be called up to go singles and stuff like that. But he made the point, he says, clearly Tez is an unbelievable athlete, as in Montez Ford. He says he's an unbelievable athlete, which he is, and an incredible wrestler. And he said he's destined one day to be world champion, which means just because you're not as good as that guy, probably what he meant was, doesn't mean you're not good. It's just because you're not as good as that guy, which is a very fair and a very valid point. And I think if you've seen the recent tag match, I think Angelo Dawkins has come a long way from where he was as well, and he's an exceptional athlete himself. But yeah, it was just a little spot on there on After the Bell with Corey Graves. The conversation came up, and I like the way he handled it. He goes, look, we all know how brilliant Montez Ford is, and not being as good as him doesn't necessarily mean that you're bad. It just means you're not as good as him. You know what I mean? So, well,
there's always been a standout performer, hasn't there? I mean, like when you put the all-around package into place, I mean, you think Shawn Michaels married Jannetty. Jannetty didn't have the charisma and the ability on the mic and stuff like that. Michaels did. You know, you think, I don't know. Let me think. I mean, Brett and Anvil and Bulldogs were kind of both basically the same. Neither of them could really talk. Just so happened that poor El Dynamite obviously got the injury.
Yeah.
But I suppose there is, like, in a lot of those tag teams that do tend to veer off, there's always that one guy. I mean, it's just the way it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The nearest in terms of mirror image and perfection to it is probably the Usos, that we talk about a lot on the show.
Yeah,
both guys are probably equally as good when you think about it. But yeah, I thought it was a nice point that he made, because obviously there's been a lot of talk going around for a number of months now, like how good one of them is, and it's been portrayed as if one is carrying the other. I don't think that's the case. I just think it's very simple. You know, like if someone turned around to Riddle and said, "Yeah, you're good, but you're not as good as Randy Orton," it's not insulting. Just means you're not that kind of way.
The only one of those little interesting segue that I've never really agreed with is the Hardy Boys, because I've always thought when Matt found his niche that he was, I think he was the better pound for pound wrestler out of the two. Personally, I think he was. I think when you look at his work in Ring of Honor and some of the matches he had when, you know, the whole WWE way of working wasn't a thing. He was absolutely fantastic. I mean, when you look at the V1 thing, it was absolutely fantastic.
Stuff with Shannon Moore. Yeah, really cool.
Man, you know, I always thought Matt was actually more charismatic on the stick, whereas I think Jeff Hardy just had that look and that kind of, he was the younger brother kind of feel that people kind of gravitated towards. But I do think there's not much to separate them, and I do believe that Matt was actually better on the mic and probably a better technical wrestler, better in the ring than Jeff. But Jeff just had something.
Well, certainly better in the ring when both feet were standing on the canvas. But I think, you know, the way we talk about styles make matches, I think also styles can make teams. And I think they both blended really well. And I think you get a lot as well. The Hart Foundation is a great example where you had the Anvil in there, who was the absolute bomber. And then you had Brett in there, who was the technical guy. And then there was a contrast between both of them, of course, on the mic.
I suppose the Bulldogs are the same in terms of styles, you know, because you wouldn't see Davey up on that top rope or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Davey couldn't move in the ring, obviously. But I mean, to be honest with you, when you think about how big Davey was, what do you reckon he was? Because he was about what, 5'11", 6. Like, he moved, you know, not too far behind Dynamite. He moved quick for a big boy. But you know, you can't have the only two teams, obviously the Midnight Express and the Rock and Roll Express, and then of course the Rockers. They were kind of ones where they could mirror image each other, and you know, in sync. And that's very rare to get teams like that. I mean, I think FTR, I think when their career is said and done, they could go down as the greatest, if not one of them ever.
Yeah, certainly they'd be in the conversation. There's no doubt about it.
Right.
I'll give you another one. The Gentleman Villain podcast was on this week with William Regal, and our friend William Regal is not too happy at the moment about some of the talent backstage not taking on advice and stuff like that, and he has asked them if they want to improve to put down their phones and work harder, and not to be so concerned probably with social media, but to go out there and put in the hard work to improve whatever you're doing, which I thought was a nice segment from William Regal. Really laid it out there. And I think especially probably in that AEW locker room, it probably rings very much true where, as we've said in the past, you have a cohort out there that's very concerned with what happens online and on social media. And then you have a cohort in there that are a little bit more old school, who want to work hard and improve and stuff like that, and don't get caught up too much on what is said on social media. So, it was nice, just a nice little segment. Check it out on the Gentleman Villain podcast there. Really, really good with William Regal. When William Regal talks, everyone should sit up and listen.
Yeah.
Little bit of news there from Tony Khan as well, confirming yet again another injury. He can't get out from under this dark cloud of injury at the moment, but he confirmed that Penelope Ford, he was asked why she wasn't around much at the moment, but she hasn't been medically passed. She's recovering from an injury. So he confirmed that. And also in terms of injury, Kofi Kingston gave us an update on Big E as well, a guy who we love on this show. We love the New Day. He said he's doing really, really well, all things considered. He said the latest update from his neck was that his C1 was ossifying, and that's producing bone. So they're going to take some CAT scans maybe in 6 months and also a year to see. But other than that, he's been able to come out of the brace. And I think he came out of the brace earlier this month, and he's been able to travel. So it's good progress there from Big E. It was a horrific injury that that happened to him and stuff like that. And especially at a time when he was doing really, really well and was starting to catapult up into that higher echelon and stuff like that. He suffered that bad, nasty neck injury and stuff like that. So, of course, as always from the show, we wish him well in his recovery. And big fans of Big E. Just one other spot before you come in there. Johnny Gargano was asked why he turned down the WWE contract. And most people were expecting the answer that maybe he wanted to go out and explore the open market being AEW. But he actually said no. He said he has become a father, and he wanted to be in more control of his time and spend the next year with his child, which would be literally impossible, probably in the midst of a wrestling contract. So he wanted to experience every minute of his child's first year. So we tipped the hat to him and to Candice. Great show.
100%.
So
yeah, no, 100%. I can't wait to see him back wherever he may land up.
I think he'll go back to WWE. I think he was really treated really well in there. I think he had a really, really good contract as far as I know. I know friend of the show, Dean, had a good chat. Dean's a huge Johnny Gargano fan. And Dean met him at WrestleCon and had a really good chat with him. They actually had a chat where they were sharing stories about fatherhood and all. And Johnny's a great guy. He never rushes you at an autograph signing or anything like that. He's just chatting away to Dino there for about 20 minutes about fatherhood. And I think he gave Dino quite an insight as well. So hats off to Johnny Gargano, great guy, and to Candice, and congrats on the baby and on parenthood and all that kind of good stuff.
Real life is always more important anyway, isn't it?
Absolutely. So over to you.
Well, a couple of little things. Obviously, going back to our show last week, which again, YouTube didn't seem to be able to ruin. So not that YouTube ruins that. I'm not implying anything. We had a bit of an uprise, which is good because we obviously talked about Kenny Omega attacking verbally on the Twitch our boy Jim Cornette, and we were kind of firmly to be fair, on Cornette's side in this one, because it was kind of an attack out of nowhere. Even though, you know, Cornette has spoken unfavorably of, you know, about him in the books in the past, which is, you know, which is fair enough. I listened to Cornette's response, his rebuttal, if you will. And as with all Cornette responses and rebuttals, they can be venomous. Now, this one was tame. There was no fucking or blinding. It was just basically to the point, straight up facts. And said, you only, now I'm paraphrasing here, so I will be corrected, but he basically said the Bucks and Omega attack him and they talk about the fans. He goes, you guys literally have about 15% of the pro wrestling fan base now. I have the other 85%. He goes, because if you look at the dip, if you can do simple mathematics, he said most former professional wrestling fans don't like it anymore. And the ones that do like to listen to the likes of Jim Cornette, and they like to watch old school stuff. So they listen to Jim. He goes, so do the numbers, numbnuts. He goes, I have all of those fans. He goes, so I make you a star. You don't make me a star. And he goes, and yeah, as for the comment about how it seeps into the locker room, they're the motherfuckers that agree with us. He goes, so basically, Jim tore him a new one and said, get off Twitch, you know, stop bringing, you know, he basically just said what we thought he would say. He was saying, Kenny, you know, he obviously hopes he never sees him in a ring again. That's Jim. Twinkle Toes and all those names are called. And he said, it's just literally these guys do not know how to deal with adversity, you know. Oh, we're afraid of what's going on. He goes, because of the Jim Cornette army. He basically defended all of the people that listened to his show, like, because in fairness, that was wrong of Kenny Omega to call them all, you know, what was it, hideous people or something. Again, we're paraphrasing, but it was something along those lines. And yeah, Jim has responded accordingly and basically put them back in the box and said he's just that they're not professional wrestlers, they're cosplayers, the usual stuff you would expect from Cornette. He also called out Jordan Grace, who likes to be controversial on Twitter for some reason. He calls her Butterface, and apparently that was apparently fat shaming back in the Me Too movement. But he said, no, Butterface. He goes, it's a thing. She's got a nice body, but her face, it's like it's Butterface. So that
sounds more like a rescue than a real thing.
well, it's not a rescue because he followed it up after her statement on Chris Benoit. She made a very controversial statement on Chris Benoit, basically saying that he couldn't hang with any of the modern day wrestlers, which is an absolutely just not even worth responding to. But then said that she was proving a point that people will stick up for this hideous murderer, blah, blah, blah. Fuck that guy. And that's when Jim Cornette then did respond, say, fatty. He goes, shut your mouth, fatty. Now I'm fat shaming. So, yeah, good old Uncle Jim. Always controversial. Always got something to say, but I'd recommend going and checking that out. But in your one, Jordan's defense, she came out and said that she's apologized for it because obviously she got heat that she can't handle, which again is a problem with most of the modern pro wrestlers. You know, they say something on Twitter and then go, oh shit, I didn't expect this shit storm. I don't know how to deal with this now. I better renege.
You'd wonder what possesses a modern day wrestler to turn around and make a silly statement like that. I mean, if you park all the other stuff related to Benoit and stuff like that, and you just talk about Chris Benoit, the pro wrestler, and the work that he's put in and the body of work in Japan, and how he rose to the world title and how he won it at WrestleMania 20 and all, to make a statement like that to say he couldn't hang with most of the current wrestlers, I think most of the current wrestlers would have a major problem hanging with Chris Benoit, to be honest. Chris Benoit was an absolute machine in the ring.
Yeah.
If you're going to make silly statements like that and you get a slap on the back of the hand, it's time, isn't it, really?
Right. So, Noel, there's only one place to go now. We've got all the other little bits out of the way. It's main event time. Talk to me. Vincent Kennedy McMahon.
Where do we begin? Netflix apparently have pulled the docu-series they had planned, probably on the back of everything that's been coming out. We've heard information this week coming out as well that it's not 1 million in hush money, but apparently he's paid out somewhere in the region of 12 million in hush money under a number of different hushes, let's say, to say the least. So a couple of interesting things came out this week. Apparently, WWE reportedly issued an internal memo about the latest Vince McMahon allegations, and it goes a little something like this. The Wall Street Journal has published a second story with expanded details on its initial WWE report last month. The memo read, "We want to reiterate that we and our board of directors take these allegations seriously. We've been cooperating fully with the investigation led by our board of directors and will continue to do so until its conclusion. Please note that upon its conclusion, WWE leadership will make itself available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you."
Yeah, I saw this and I'll tell you exactly what I think about it momentarily. Yeah, like as I was going to say, my opinion on this, someone on the board is out for blood because this is definitely where it's getting leaked from. Someone wants Vinny gone. I mean, that's without a shadow of a doubt. Because what's the end game of this? Oh, we keep him on board. They're doing these internal investigations. You know, WWE are up there as one of the biggest corporations, entertainment corporations, you know, on planet Earth, behind Disney and Netflix and stuff like that. I mean, there's only one end game that people want out of this, and that's Vinny Mac gone and his name tarnished. Now, that's not me for 1 minute saying that some of these allegations aren't true. I'm not saying that, but what we can definitely establish is that someone is leaking this stuff to the press.
Yeah, we did definitely have a feeling that when the first one came out, we said that this might be the, you know, the way where the first wave hits the land with the tsunami and then it goes back out and then the real wave comes in. And we had a feeling that it could be very similar to this, that we didn't think that potentially the first allegation would be on its own, if you like, and that more would with it. That this was a lot bigger than first anticipated or revealed, if you like. But I mean, also, I suppose we have to talk about in terms of another thing came out there that was leaked, which is interesting the other day as well. We were very concerned when he went out and he did that appearance on SmackDown. Remember when he went then, now, forever, and us and all that kind of thing, you know what I mean? Apparently he walked back through this is allegedly, he walked back through the gorilla position. I don't know if you read this. Proceeded to go over to the table and put on the headphones and shouted apparently as loud as he could, "Fuck him." So this is the level of arrogance that you're dealing with this. I don't know if you looked at the True Geordie podcast as well. Chris Jericho was on it there the other day while they were on tour. And he was asked about the Vince McMahon stuff and what's come up, and he spoke very highly of Vince and his relationship with him and stuff like that. And you know, a lot of the information that does be out there in the ether about working with him and how difficult he is to work with and the ideas that he comes up with. But Jericho made a point that some of the stuff he came up with in Jericho's career, that he added little things onto Jericho's ideas to make them absolutely brilliant, and he gave him his props. But he also made the point, and I don't know whether it sat with me really well. I don't know if you've seen this or not, if you've watched it yet, but he was asked about the allegations and stuff that are coming up. And Jericho made the point that from a moral point of view, it's really, really bad. Looks really, really bad. But he said, from a legal point of view, he really hadn't done anything wrong. He had had an affair and paid someone through an NDA to be quiet. And that kind of, it didn't sit great with me. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but that was kind of what was put out there, that it was more a moral thing, and it was kind of like as if this thing happens all the time. NDAs, obviously, maybe in the US, we're not too sure. Maybe NDAs in the US is a regular thing that happens out there where people are paid shut up money and there's an agreement drafted up that you don't discuss this again. It's kept private and all this kind of thing. Maybe it's very much the norm over there. I don't know. Certainly not here. It isn't. And I'm just wondering how do you what you're thinking on that? For me, it was quite uncomfortable.
Well, look, morally, you know me, I'm kind of a loyal dog, so I'm not really into the. You'll find plenty of skeletons on my history that I've shared with people, so I don't really hide much shit. But one thing you'll never find is straying away from home. You know what I mean? And that's just my own personal philosophy. However, we've all had friends and mates who would seek that. You know what I mean? And it was probably the one or two unlikable characteristics of that one or two friends that we probably all have. And that, you know, you're meant to be the loyal dog and keep your mouth shut and say nothing and what not. That's just the way life is, unfortunately. Look, Ric Flair has made a career out of being idolized, the guy that everyone wants to be. 4 wives, it's all fun and games, you know. 4 wives he's had, and you know, he got all the girls, drank all the beer, won all the belts, traveled from town to town. I mean, is it any different, you know, without the hush money? And who knows, there probably was hush money too. Vinnie Mac's a little bit different because he's you know, but then again, is he different? Like, a lot of pro wrestling fans are strange. They're coming out and saying, all he did was have an affair. All he did was, you know, get his bit. All he did was, you know, this and that, you know. I'm afraid to talk too much about it because, you know, some of the stuff that may come out, alleged stuff, involves a little bit more sinister stuff, as we've heard in the past.
Yeah.
So I don't really want to speak to that. But listen, you know, if you're talking about getting a blowjob in the back of a car by someone who was willing to do it for a spot, and then, you know, she wasn't able to fulfill her end of the bargain when she got that spot and then got sacked. Sorry, lady, but you're just as big a part of the problem as anyone else. And then you can't come out, you know, 12, 13 years later, which is obviously the one that we're talking about in 2005, and then came out in 2012 or something like that, and came out then in 2018 or 19 when there was a certain movement going around, and then jumping on the bandwagon when you've already been paid off. It's like, why didn't you do something to help that happen, to stop that happening to someone else? So there's kind of there's really shades of gray within this one, and it's kind of there's so
I suppose the overall factor that's in there, and it's all alleged, of course, but the overall factor I would say would be kind of the abuse of power. You know, that's where my line in terms of concern would be. Look, plenty.
Well, you're dealing with a public limited company, and most of these guys are subcontractors. Most of these guys and girls are subcontractors. And don't forget, even the people that they work with from town to town, whether it be ladies, gents, whatever, you know, they would be hired for, you know, a week as well, because they'd be working on the lights. You know, they work with local companies as well. They bring in local companies. So it's like you're dealing with a lot of subcontractors, but it's not a private company. It's a public limited company. And, you know, you're dealing with the majority shareholder here. And if you know, it is an abuse of power. You know, Jim Cornette said something today, like, you know, we all knew Vince. He goes, I knew Vince. Some guys like, you know, Michaels and Brett and people like that looked at him as a father figure. He said, I kind of looked at him as more like, you know, that I was friends with that really cool headmaster kind of thing. You know what I mean? He goes, but, you know, it was like that headmaster, you know, if you were getting too loud and crass, he would kind of pull the glasses down and just give you the look, and everyone would kind of sit up straight a little bit and kind of quieten down a little bit.
Yeah.
But he said, like, if you had told me that, you know, he had nude pictures of himself that he used to send to people, and I'm not laughing because, you know, in no way, shape, or form am I saying, oh, that's hilarious. I'm laughing because it's just a ridiculous idea to me that you could be that stupid, actually. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I mean, if there's evidence there on this, it's kind of like, I just don't know how this goes. Again, I come back to the point, a lot of these cases aren't kind of cases brought to bringing them, to putting them in jail or behind bars. You know, it's not like an Epstein type thing. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
it seems to be to basically get him out of the position that he's in. Seems to be the direction it kind of is heading, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's more a case of, well, we don't know how it's going to unfold and if anything else is going to come out, of course. And we don't even know. I mean, again, it's all alleged. So we don't know what sort of pathway this is going to take. But it would seem out there at the moment there's a movement that they kind of want him in one way, shape, or form away from the business. Like you, I don't expect it at any stage to end up with Vince McMahon behind bars or anything like that. No. But I do see a situation where it might get to a point where he probably finds it too much and he may have to walk away.
Untenable.
Definitely untenable and stuff like that. And I think, going down in a blaze of glory, and I don't know whether that's where the ending in this happens. I'm not too sure. But I think, another thing I heard out there on the ether today, I'm just going to put it out there, that you may not be aware of. But apparently, obviously, Netflix have probably invested a lot of money in this docuseries that they're now cancelling. So they've probably lost a few bob on it. But apparently, Netflix, and again, it's out there in the ether, have been contacting some former people about doing another docuseries that apparently might be like a Dark Side of the Ring docuseries, going the opposite way. But apparently the people that they have contacted, again, all alleged that I have heard, are not happy with the financial offer that Netflix are offering them to come out and tell their story. So they're holding off that. And we know that Netflix in the past have been serial underpayers in terms of their programming and stuff like that. They cut their cloth quite thin in terms of financials. So
a bit like Vince, actually.
Vince knows when it's time to pony up, Vince ponies up. There's no doubt about that.
There's an interesting segue, actually. The timeline. Conrad, shout out to Conrad, by the way, made this point as well on Twitter recently, and I heard Jim Cornette and Brian Last talk about this recently. Was like, if you look at one of the timelines when that girl was paid $3 million for hush money, it was in and around the same time that he couldn't afford to keep Brett's contract.
I read that, actually, yeah,
which is very interesting, isn't it? Considering it was $2 million over a year, not a straight up lump sum. So I wonder if was that kind of was that shot allegedly? Now the shot wasn't alleged, that's real, but I wonder if that shot to the jaw that broke the ankle also was some form of instant karma. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. Let the listeners come back at me and tell me this. You know what I mean? Somewhere in the ether, as you like to say, somewhere in the universe, somehow all the kind of justice was put into that big Canadian right hand.
There was no one in the corner of that locker room burning sage to cleanse that place whatsoever. But we'll just put it out there.
No. It was just an interesting. But that is very, very interesting. I mean, this could go. For me, I have no pony in the race, really. Look, at the end of the day, a scumbag is a scumbag, and if you've done wrong, you deserve all the karma you get. We don't know the man. We can only go based on, look, we've friends that know the man and stuff like that, and work for the man and all that. We've always heard varying stories and stuff like that. So I'm not willing to kind of. Everyone that knows me knows that I don't go on the witch hunt. I am innocent until proven guilty. I'll always be that way, for better or worse. If you don't like it, tough titties, because that's just the way I am. So that's why I go alleged. I'm not going to give, because I can't sit here, nor can you, and go, but I think he may have done it. Bullshit. We can't do that. We can also not turn around categorically and say there's no way he did it. You know what I mean? So it works both ways.
It's kind of at the moment, the stuff that's coming out allegedly is not really shocking anyone in the wrestling community. So I think at the moment, things are locked and loaded and the gallery is sitting waiting. And it's not ready yet to fire those guns. But there's no doubt this will develop. There's no doubt at the moment the horse has got the bit between its teeth, and it's not going to go away any quick time, I would say. And I think we just have to report on what we hear allegedly, and we have to wait and see what comes out of this.
Yeah, and I think we'll leave.
I'd imagine over the next 6 months, this is going to be a main event on this show on a regular basis.
And that's not something we actually take pleasure in, believe it or not. Even though we have these kind of cool, thumbnails and stuff like that, it's not actually something we take pleasure in because, you don't want to see the downfall of a man. You also don't want to see, the abuse of anybody, whether it be male or female, an abuse of power. So. Yeah. Look, we'll put a pin on that one until next week, and we'll see. But before all of you guys get too down, we have a new segment today, and Niall is the one who came up with it, like I mentioned at the top of the show. So I will allow him to introduce it. But we're going to start leaving you guys and girls feeling a little bit better about these shows going forward, so you don't have a bad or sour taste in your mouth, and so that we don't. So Niall, without further ado, take it away, my friend.
Yeah, what I was thinking today, and I was thinking, obviously with our viewership and our subscribers and stuff like that, we have quite a broad range in terms of age and stuff like that, and I thought it would be nice if we introduced a short segment at the end of the show where we look back at the week in wrestling from a historical point of view. And also we mentioned some notable birthdays and stuff like that. So what it does is it gives some of our younger viewers, if you like, our younger subscribers, a taste of some of the old stuff that they may want to go back and look at on YouTube or something like that. Just highlights from that week and stuff like that, So if we start, I suppose, with birthdays, nowhere better to start than with stand back. There's a hurricane coming through, Mr. Shane Hurricane Helms. It's his birthday. He celebrates his birthday this week. Other birthdays this week, Sami Zayn. It's his birthday this week as well. Tyson Kidd. And of course, a man that I was a huge fan of back in the day as part of Slick's Army, the Natural Butch Reed, celebrates his birthday today, born in 1954.
Shout out to Tyson Kidd in particular. I was literally talking to him last week. Guy is an absolute diamond. Love him. So happy birthday, Tyson Kidd.
Yeah, and we're going to finish out, of course, with the man who turned 45 yesterday. The man who we will kind of refer to at times as the GOAT, one Mr. Brock Lesnar. Oh. The reason I finished out with him, I have a little rundown here for you before we get into our look back. 7 times WWE champion, 3 times WWE Universal Champion, IWGP Heavyweight Champion, UFC Heavyweight Champion, 5 times WrestleMania main eventer, 1-time Money in the Bank winner, 2-time Royal Rumble winner, 2002 King of the Ring, and the man, look away now, Undertaker fans, the man who ended Undertaker's streak. So I thought he would be the most fitting one to finish in terms of his birthdays. And
we'll go down, if not already, as one of the greatest of all time and one of the biggest superstars of all time in any kind of sports.
When we talk about a man who moves needles, and we talk about Roman Reigns being the needle mover, you can't but not
allegedly.
But you can't talk about you cannot talk about Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar is the
allegedly. I don't know where he was putting that needle. I'm just saying allegedly. This is
it was being put on the pay-per-view buy rate. Where else would it be put?
Hey, listen, he was a big guy when he came into the company. He was a big guy when he was 18. Come on.
Yeah, let's start 1961. We're going back way here now. This is even before my time, which at times is a struggle to get back past. Like it was yesterday. Like it was yesterday.
I'm telling you.
Gene Knitsky defeated Vern Gagne to win the AWA World Heavyweight Championship in Minnesota, 1961.
That is that's a match that I've obviously gone back and watched. I mean, like I've said this on previous shows, and you know this, Noel. You and me both are able to go back and watch some of those black and white matches that were like they were proper Donnybrooks in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? Most of them ended up in Donnybrooks, but they were slogs. They were like boxing matches. I mean, they went on for days. But this one in particular, I remember the moment as well. Well, when I say I remember the moment, obviously I've seen the moment. Gene Kinitsky, my God, what a guy.
Vern Gagne.
And Vern Gagne, of course, as well. Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, good Lord, there's real pro wrestlers, real men.
I should also say as well, shout out to TJR Wrestling. They have a site out there that provides us with this information. It's a cool site if you ever want to go out and look at history within a week or within a date or something like that. They have it down to a T. And going back then to 1987, one Mr. Lex Luger, the total package, won the NWA United States Championship for the first time with a win over your friend on the show, Nikita Koloff, in Greensboro, North Carolina, which I thought was excellent. 2005, a little segue here for you. This is one, you mentioned this man earlier in terms of being the better side of wrestling in terms of the Hardy Boys. But in 2005, on This Week, in a memorable Raw segment, if you remember, it had come out that one Mr. Edge, Adam Copeland, had an affair with Lita, Matt Hardy's girlfriend at the time. And this was the Raw segment where Matt Hardy jumped the barrier and attacked Edge and began the on-screen storyline behind the real storyline. 2005, Raw This Week.
I remember that well. Going, what the fuck? And he got in and said, come see Ring of Honor, blah, blah, blah.
2009, This Week. I think it must have been International Fight Week, but this was at UFC 100. This was the match, the rematch between Brock Lesnar and Frank Mir. This was the interim belt versus the real belt. And if you remember, in the second round, Brock Lesnar absolutely smashed up Frank Mir against the cage and won by TKO, and also secured 1.6 million buy rate on the pay-per-view, breaking the UFC record. So when we talk about the needle mover, that's it there. Nice little segue.
100%.
2013, WWE opened its much lauded WWE Performance Center in Orlando, Florida. And if you look back over the last 3 years and everything that happened with COVID, I'm sure they're very happy that they did, because they used that at its base when they couldn't have fans in the building and stuff like that. 1986, a man that I know you revere greatly, wrestling legend, and I don't use those words lightly, Bruno Sammartino wrestled his final match in Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, I was too. I remember it well. I'm going to say that every week. I remember it well. That should be on a t-shirt. That's going to be my t-shirt. Jesus, 1986, dude. When you think about it, holy shit, I was 2 years of age. You'd obviously remember it well in terms of either you've seen it or at the time, or else it would have been in the magazines that you were subscribing to at the time. Yeah,
this is when magazines were newspapers.
Yeah,
just for our much younger listeners.
Yes.
The match saw Sammartino's team, which was Intercontinental champion Tito Santana. They were in a cage match against Macho Man Randy Savage and one Adrian Adonis. So there you go. There's a little bit of history in that one. 1995.
Adorable
Adrian Adonis.
One of the best punches in pro wrestling. Go back and watch them.
Serious athlete as well, for a man of his size as well. And also the man who got an interesting haircut off one, Rowdy Roddy Piper. 1995, Mr. Jack Tunney, the longtime on-screen president of the WWF, was released from the company after portraying that role on TV for over a decade. And go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, followed by Gorilla Monsoon, if I recall correctly. Gorilla Monsoon became the on-screen commissioner and handler of on-screen business that we all thought was behind the screen business.
Yeah.
Shout out
And
to
then
Jack Tunney.
1999 SummerSlam. This week, it was announced that wrestler, actor, and then reigning governor of Minnesota, Jesse the Body Ventura, will return to WWE as special referee in the main event for the up-and-coming SummerSlam.
Beautiful.
That's everything I have for this week. And there's some
what a way to
stuff
finish.
in there. Yeah.
What a way to finish, man. Yeah, like that's a really cool segment. I'm telling you, guys, if you are listening, please comment on all that stuff and let us know your memories from those particular moments, because that's a really, really cool way to bring up certain moments that we can actually spitball and segue on that we wouldn't normally think of. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was sort of thinking today, at a time where it's very easy to hate the business, this might be that segment that brings you back to go look at some of this stuff and maybe love the business again a bit as well.
So, and I think it's a great, it's simple this week in history. So that's a brand new segment that you're going to get each and every single week. Let us know your thoughts. Shout out to Noel for coming up with that idea. I love it because it makes the wheels turn and you kind of go, oh shit. And it's a good way as well to really test your wrestling knowledge, you know, for, you know, if you were doing a pro wrestling table quiz or something like that.
Yeah.
It's a
well,
really
remember the span that's there as well. We've gone from 1961 all the way to 2013. Just in this week in wrestling. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
So we'll definitely do that again next week for sure.
Yeah, we'll do it every week. We'll have notable birthdays and we'll have a look back to that week in pro wrestling. Yeah, it's good to jog the memory and look at some. And like there's probably hundreds of stuff out there you could put in this week. I just picked out some. Because some are more applicable to the show as well. You were talking about the Hardys. We were talking about Brock's birthday.
Of course.
So there's some cool stuff out there.
Of course.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's kind of, and that was actually contrived. That was contrived. That was just, you know, it wasn't contrived, should I say. It was just something that happened naturally that we had mentioned the Hardys earlier. So it was really cool. And then Brock obviously been talked about being his birthday. But obviously you guys know the drill. Please do be sure to like and subscribe to the page and to the channel. All those likes and clicks and comments mean the world to us. It's literally what is going to keep us going and help us break the YouTube algorithm that is ever changing. But either way, we're here for you. We do this on our own time, and we really do appreciate every time we look and see how many views we've got on this. And I know sometimes the subjects can be a little bit heavy, like this week, but we're always going to finish on a strong point from here on out, so that you guys and girls aren't basically sitting there either enraged or wanting to send a nasty tweet somewhere, somehow into the ether, into the Twitterverse. So we're here. We've got you covered. Sometimes we'll both, I suppose, what's the word, Noel, here? I'm usually the one, but sometimes I will either enrage you or else your rage will vicariously come through me onto the screen and you'll go, yeah. Or sometimes you want to, like, you know, I don't know, punch the screen. That's okay too. That's all right.
Just don't punch it.
But just don't punch it, because you got to watch again next week as well.
Laptops are too expensive.
Way too expensive. Way too expensive. So no, with it, honestly, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Do comment, let us know. Again, we're available on Twitter. We are Dynamo's Dozen on Twitter. So literally just type in Dynamo's Dozen. You'll get it. So it's at Ian Kelly. No, sorry, that's my, I'm giving my personal email away here, at Ian Kelly 800,005. Sorry, that's my bad.
Inbox full.
What Vinny Mac does to me. Inbox full.
Yeah,
it's all right. You can have that too. IanKelly800@gmail.com. That's Dynamo's Dozen at gmail.com. And we're at Dynamo's Dozen on Twitter. We're on Instagram as well. We're not quite active on Instagram, to be fair, because it's just pictures and stuff like that. But we will actually start put up the kind of cool thumbnails that we make. Usually between Noel and myself, we always come up with something. And of course, we're on Facebook as well. But if you want to email the show, if you have any ideas or you want to give us any feedback, we've been getting a lot of feedback, Noel. In fairness, you've been getting some on your side. I've been getting on my side. So it's always cool to hear back from the listeners. But until next week, Noel, any closing words?
Yeah, no, just if we've missed any notable birthdays from this week, let us know and stuff like that. Or if we've missed any big highlights in wrestling that you remember from this week in wrestling, drop them down in the comments on obviously there. And actually for our subscribers as well and our listeners as well, if you want us to throw us information on a birthday and stuff like that, you want to shout out on the show, drop us an email or whatever it is, and we'll give you a shout out as part of the notable birthdays that we mentioned. Because remember, it's us the fans that make these guys the stars that they are. So it's no harm to throw you guys in there in that pot as well. So if you want a birthday shout out or something like that, drop it in there. Email us, give us the details on the birthday and the name and where you're from. Let us know where you're from. We'll give you a shout out on the show.
I'll tell you what we'll even do. We'll obviously, now that we're kind of back in action on a full-time schedule, we'll try and get some more mugs made. And what we'll do maybe from August onwards is we'll get some mugs, and everyone that kind of sends us in their birth dates and stuff, or anything that they have positive to say about the show, we'll put their name into a hat, and at the end of the month we'll announce a winner, and I'll personally get it sent out to you.
We'll announce who the mug of the month is.
The mug of the month. There you go. Absolutely. And it keeps me out of that conversation as well. So
yeah.
But no, Noel, great work. Great idea. Love it. And until next week, in fact, it might not even be next week, because finally, when this goes up, which is the 13th that you're watching this, on the 15th, you're going to see that interview with Finlay Martin, where there will be more Vince McMahon talk, but also we have a positive end to it. We have some talk about our own Irish pro wrestlers and how well they've done, and Finlay's perspective on how well the likes of Fergal, Finn Balor, Becky Lynch, and of course Sheamus have done, and Jordan Devlin gets a shout as well. So that's going to be
next
really
week.
cool
Next
show.
week we'll be looking heavily at SummerSlam as well. We'll take a look at that card as 100%. It evolves even more. So yeah, absolutely, 100%.
So we've always got you covered. But until next week, from me, Ian the Dynamo Kelly, for the shopkeeper Niall Hogan, for this week, this has been your Dynamo's Doesn't Fix, and we are over and out.